Chapter 1. The Ultimatum. Ethan Vance adjusted the cuffs of his uniform, the crisp navy blue fabric doing little to ease his discomfort. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders as he stood before the gleaming glass doors of the United Galactic Federation's diplomatic headquarters. He wasn't a soldier, nor was he a politician. Ethan was a negotiator, one of the best Earth had to offer, but nothing in his experience could have prepared him for this. "Ethan, relax," came the calm, clipped voice of Saria Trellis, his Trellin partner. Standing beside him, the tall, silver-skinned alien radiated confidence. Her violet eyes seemed to pierce through him, assessing his every move. "If you walk in there looking like you've already lost, they'll eat you alive." "Thanks for the pep talk," Ethan muttered, tugging at his collar. "Just what I needed." Saria smirked, a sharp, almost predatory expression. "You'll thank me later. Or curse me. Either way, let's go." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber filled with representatives from the Trellin Empire and the United Galactic Federation. At the head of the table sat Admiral Kale, his imposing presence amplified by the cybernetic implant that replaced his left arm. "Grayson, Trellis, sit," Kale barked without preamble. His voice was as sharp as the tension in the room. Ethan exchanged a glance with Saria before taking his seat. The holographic display in the center of the table flickered to life, showing a detailed map of the Valdar Expanse, a contested region near the edges of known space. Kale didn't waste time. "The Cinder Dominion has begun deploying forces near Viralis, 7. If they establish a foothold, they'll cut off our supply routes and gain access to a resource-rich system. We cannot allow that." Ethan frowned. "And what exactly do you want us to do about it?" Kale's cybernetic fingers tapped against the table. "The Dominion has located an artifact on Viralis, 7. Intel suggests it's a pre-collapse weapon of incredible power. Your mission is to secure it before they do." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And if we fail?" Kale leaned forward, his gaze unflinching. "Then the Dominion uses it to annihilate our defenses, and Earth becomes their next target." The weight of the mission. As the briefing concluded, Ethan found himself alone with Saria in the corridor outside. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the station's systems. "You're awfully quiet," Saria said, her tone uncharacteristically soft. "I'm just thinking," Ethan replied, "about how ridiculous this all is. We're supposed to outmaneuver the Dominion on their turf, grab some ancient superweapon, and get out alive? Sounds like a suicide mission." Saria stopped walking, forcing Ethan to turn and face her. "Listen to me, human. This is bigger than you or me. If we fail, billions will die. You don't get to doubt yourself right now." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but she cut him off, stepping closer and fixing him with a steely gaze. "This is your only chance. Human, act now or regret forever." The words hung in the air, their weight settling into Ethan's chest. He could see the fire in Saria's eyes, the unwavering determination of someone who had fought her whole life for a cause. He envied her certainty, even as it intimidated him. "All right," he said finally, his voice steadying. "Let's do this." The journey to Viralis, 7. The mission began aboard the Vanguard, a sleek Trellin cruiser equipped with advanced cloaking technology. As they entered the Valdar Expanse, Ethan found himself mesmerized by the view outside the observation window. The swirling nebulae and distant stars were breathtaking, a stark reminder of how small and fragile humanity truly was. Saria joined him, her presence as commanding as ever. "Nervous?" "A little," Ethan admitted. "I've negotiated with pirates and warlords, but this is different." Saria's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. If you weren't nervous, I'd think you were a fool." The ship's AI interrupted their conversation, its monotone voice echoing through the cabin. "Approaching Viralis, 7. Cloaking engaged. Estimated time to arrival, 20 minutes. Saria straightened, her demeanor shifting into something sharper, more focused. "Get your gear ready. We'll be deploying as soon as we land." The first contact. Viralis, 7 was as beautiful as it was dangerous. Lush jungles stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with crystalline rivers and towering cliffs. But the beauty was deceptive. Ethan could feel the tension in the air, the sense of being watched. "We're not alone," Saria murmured, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma blade. Ethan nodded, gripping his compact rifle tightly. Dominion? Most likely, she replied. Stay close. The two moved cautiously through the jungle, their every step muffled by the dense foliage. Saria led the way, her movements fluid and silent, while Ethan did his best to keep up without tripping over roots or slipping on moss-covered rocks. They reached a clearing where the remains of an ancient structure jutted out of the ground like jagged teeth. The air around it shimmered faintly, an indication of the artifact's energy signature. This is it, Saria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Ethan could respond, a low growl echoed from the shadows. The Dominion had arrived. The ultimatum. The Dominion soldiers emerged from the jungle, their black armor glinting in the sunlight. They were taller and more imposing than Ethan had imagined, their movements precise and menacing. One of them stepped forward, a commander judging by the ornate insignia on his chest plate. You are trespassing, the commander said, his voice a guttural snarl. Leave now, or die. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. The artifact was within reach, but engaging the Dominion head-on was suicide. He looked to Saria, searching for guidance. Her response was immediate. We don't retreat. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. And if they attack? Saria glanced at him, a fierce determination in her eyes. Then we make them regret it. The Dominion commander raised his weapon, and in that moment, Ethan realized there was no room for hesitation. His decision here and now would define the mission and possibly the fate of his world. This is your only chance, human, Saria said, her voice steady and unyielding. Act now, or regret forever. Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. Let's show them what we're made of. Chapter 2. Into the Abyss. The jungle of Viralis 7 was alive with strange sounds, from the soft rustle of glowing, bioluminescent plants to the occasional guttural calls of unseen creatures. Ethan and Saria moved cautiously through the thick undergrowth, the weight of their mission hanging over them like a storm cloud. The Dominion wasn't far behind, and every step brought them closer to both the artifact and potential disaster. Keep your eyes open, Saria murmured, her voice low but sharp. She moved with practiced precision, her plasma blade in hand and her violet eyes scanning the trees. I don't need to be told twice, Ethan replied, gripping his rifle tightly. His heart pounded with each step, the primal part of his brain screaming that he shouldn't be here. But there was no turning back now, not with the stakes this high. They came to a clearing where the dense vegetation gave way to a jagged ruin that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The structure shimmered faintly under the light of Viralis 7's twin moons, its ancient design both beautiful and alien. That's it, Saria said, nodding toward the ruin. The artifact is inside. Ethan swallowed hard. Let's hope it's worth the trouble. An unseen threat. As they approached the ruins, the sound of heavy footsteps reached their ears. Saria froze, her posture tense as she gestured for Ethan to take cover. They crouched behind a cluster of thick, glowing plants, their breath held as the footsteps grew louder. A squad of Dominion soldiers emerged from the jungle, their black armor glinting ominously in the moonlight. Each of them carried heavy plasma rifles, their movements precise and coordinated. At their head was a commander, taller than the others, his armor adorned with intricate designs that marked his rank. They beat us here, Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. They're searching the area, Saria replied. We still have a chance to reach the artifact first. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You have a plan? Saria smirked. Always. She pulled a small device from her belt, a spherical drone no larger than a tennis ball. Activating it, she sent it hovering into the air. The drone emitted a faint hum as it moved toward the Dominion squad, its cloaking field rendering it nearly invisible. What's it doing? Ethan asked. Just wait, Saria said, her voice calm. Moments later, the drone unleashed a blinding flash of light, accompanied by a high-pitched screech that sent the Dominion soldiers into chaos. Disoriented and momentarily blinded, they stumbled and fired their weapons wildly, their shots scorching the surrounding trees. Now, Saria hissed, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him toward the ruins. The artifact chamber. Inside the structure, the air was cool and still, heavy with the scent of ancient stone and damp earth. Glowing symbols adorned the walls, their patterns shifting and pulsing like a heartbeat. The deeper they ventured, the brighter the symbols became, casting an eerie light that illuminated their path. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and every shadow seemed to writhe with unseen threats. "This place is unsettling," he muttered. Saria nodded. "Pre-collapse technology. It doesn't follow the laws of nature as we know them. Be on your guard." They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ruins. At its center floated the artifact, a crystalline orb suspended in midair, its surface swirling with vibrant colors. The energy it radiated was almost tangible, making the air hum and Ethan's skin prickle. "That's it," Saria said, her voice low with awe. "The key to turning the tide against the Dominion." Ethan stepped closer, but Saria stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "Careful. If the artifact is unstable, dash." The sound of heavy footsteps interrupted her warning. They turned to see the Dominion commander entering the chamber, flanked by his soldiers. His glowing red visor fixed on the artifact, then shifted to Ethan and Saria. "You're too late," the commander growled, his voice a deep, guttural snarl. "The artifact belongs to the Dominion." A risky gamble. Ethan felt a surge of panic as the Dominion soldiers raised their weapons. Outnumbered and cornered, they had little chance of fighting their way out. He glanced at Saria, whose grip on her plasma blade tightened. "Stand down," the commander barked, his tone commanding. "Surrender now, and I may let you live." Saria's eyes narrowed. Not a chance. Ethan's mind raced. Fighting was suicide, but surrendering wasn't an option either. Desperation gave him an idea, a gamble that could either save them or doom them entirely. He stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Wait," he said loudly, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We don't have to do this." The Dominion commander tilted his head, clearly intrigued. "Explain." Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "We both want the artifact, but fighting here will only destroy it or worse, destabilize it. Let us take it. We'll study it, figure out how it works, and share the results. It's the smarter play." The commander's visor glowed brighter, his gaze piercing. "And what guarantee do I have that you'll keep your word?" "You don't," Ethan admitted. "But consider this. If the artifact is damaged, neither of us wins. This way, at least you'll have a chance to benefit." The chamber fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Saria shot Ethan a look that could have melted steel, but she didn't intervene. Finally, the commander lowered his weapon. "Take it," he said. "But if you betray us, Earth will burn." A narrow escape. Saria wasted no time. She activated a containment field generator, encasing the artifact in a protective sphere of energy. The crystalline orb pulsed brightly as it was sealed, its glow dimming slightly. "Let's move," she said, her voice tight with urgency. They retraced their steps through the ruins, the Dominion soldiers watching them with predatory eyes. Once outside, Saria activated her comms. "Vanguard, we have the artifact. Prepare for extraction." As they ran through the jungle, the Dominion commander's voice echoed behind them. "Kill them." Blaster fire erupted, the jungle lighting up with flashes of red as the Dominion soldiers gave chase. Saria activated a cloaking device, temporarily obscuring their position. "Keep moving," she shouted. The Vanguard shuttle descended from the sky, its engines roaring. Ethan and Saria sprinted toward it, dodging blaster fire as the ramp lowered. The ship's turrets unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, forcing the Dominion soldiers to scatter. As the ramp closed behind them, Saria turned to Ethan, her expression a mix of fury and reluctant admiration. "You just gambled with our lives back there. And it worked, didn't it?" Ethan shot back, collapsing into his seat. "Sometimes, you have to take risks." Saria's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You're lucky I don't kill you myself." The artifact's warning. Back aboard the Vanguard, the artifact was placed in a secure containment chamber. As the ship's AI began analyzing it, the crystalline orb emitted a blinding flash of light. Symbols and images swirled across its surface, forming a message that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Saria's expression darkened as she deciphered the symbols. This isn't just a weapon. Ethan frowned. What is it? It's a warning, Saria said, her voice grim. The Dominion isn't just coming for Earth. They're coming for the entire galaxy. Chapter 3. A Treacherous Alliance. The atmosphere aboard the Vanguard was tense. The artifact, now safely contained in a shimmering stasis field, sat in the ship's secure lab. Its ominous glow illuminated the small chamber, casting long shadows that seemed to pulse with its energy. Ethan and Saria stood outside, both staring through the observation window as the ship's AI continued its analysis. "You're sure about this?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Saria's violet eyes narrowed. "No. But what choice do we have? That artifact contains information we need about the Dominion's plans, their capabilities, and the scope of their threat." Ethan crossed his arms, his gaze flicking back to the glowing orb. "You said it's a warning. A warning about what?" Saria exhaled slowly, her voice tinged with unease. "The symbols on the artifact are ancient Zyran runes, a precursor language used by countless civilizations before their collapse. They suggest the Dominion has uncovered something. A weapon, a technology, or maybe even an entity capable of wiping out entire star systems." Ethan's stomach sank. "And now they're targeting Earth." Saria nodded grimly. "Earth and every other world that stands in their way." A desperate call. The Vanguard's communications console flared to life, and the voice of Admiral Kale filled the room. "Grayson Trellis, we've received your preliminary report. Do you have the artifact?" "We do," Saria confirmed. "But there's a problem. The artifact isn't just a weapon, it's a warning. The Dominion's plans are more catastrophic than we anticipated." Kale's voice grew sharp. "Explain." Saria quickly outlined what they had deciphered, the runes, and the implications of the artifact's message. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Kale spoke. "If what you're saying is true, we need to act immediately. But we'll need more than speculation to rally the Federation. You'll have to bring that artifact to Outpost Theta for full analysis." Saria stiffened. "With respect, Admiral, that's a terrible idea. Outpost Theta is vulnerable, and the Dominion knows it. If we bring the artifact there, we'll lead them straight to one of our key research hubs." Kale's tone turned icy. "Do you have a better suggestion, Trellis?" Saria hesitated, then glanced at Ethan. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "We form an alliance." Kale scoffed. "With whom?" "The Kaler Syndicate," Ethan said. "They're scavengers and smugglers, but they've got the resources and networks to help us. If anyone can keep the artifact out of Dominion hands, it's them." Kale's silence was deafening. Finally, he muttered, "You're insane." "Maybe," Ethan admitted. "But if we wait for the Federation to act, it'll be too late." Meeting the Kaler Syndicate. Hours later, the Vanguard arrived at a hidden Kaler outpost, massive asteroid hollowed out and transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Ships of all shapes and sizes docked at the sprawling station, their crews moving with the calculated efficiency of people who thrived on the fringes of galactic law. Saria led the way, her posture rigid as they navigated the crowded corridors. Ethan followed, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar faces. Max, their ever-loyal companion, padded beside them, his nose twitching at the myriad of strange scents. "Do you trust these people?" Ethan asked. "Not in the slightest," Saria replied. "But we don't have a choice." They entered a large chamber filled with holographic displays and Kaler guards armed to the teeth. At the center of the room stood Vorik, the leader of the Kaler Syndicate. He was tall and imposing, his reptilian features gleaming under the harsh light. His yellow eyes narrowed as he regarded the newcomers. "Saria Trellis," Vorik said, his voice a low hiss. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," Saria replied coldly. "We need your help." Vorik smirked, his sharp teeth glinting. "Help? From me? What could the mighty Trellan Empire possibly want from a lowly smuggler like me?" "The Dominion," Saria said bluntly. "They're coming, and if we don't stop them, they'll destroy everything including you." Vorik's smile faded. "And what makes you think I care?" Saria stepped forward, her voice low and dangerous. "Because when the Dominion's done with us, they'll come for you next. You think they'll let your little empire thrive while they take over the galaxy?" Vorik's gaze shifted to Ethan. And who's this? Your pet human? Ethan bristled but held his ground. Name's Ethan, and I'm the one who's going to convince you this alliance is worth your while. A shaky agreement. The negotiations were tense. Vorik was skeptical, his distrust of the Federation and the Trellan Empire evident in every word. But Ethan's experience as a negotiator shone through. He appealed to Vorik's pragmatism, emphasizing the mutual benefits of cooperation and the existential threat posed by the Dominion. After what felt like hours, Vorik finally relented. Fine, we'll help. But if this goes sideways, don't expect me to clean up your mess. We wouldn't dream of it, Saria said, her tone icy. Vorik leaned closer to Ethan, his yellow eyes gleaming. You're either very brave or very stupid human. Let's hope it's the former. An ambush. As they prepared to leave the outpost, the Dominion struck. A fleet of sleek, black ships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons tearing through the Kalar defenses with ruthless precision. They tracked us, Saria shouted, drawing her plasma blade. Ethan cursed under his breath, grabbing his rifle. How? The artifacts in stasis. They must have intercepted our comms, Saria replied. We need to get back to the Vanguard now. The station descended into chaos as Dominion soldiers stormed the corridors. Ethan and Saria fought side by side, their movements a seamless blend of strategy and instinct. Max darted between them, his energy shield deflecting enemy fire as he lunged at soldiers with ferocious precision. A leadership moment. As they reached the docking bay, Vorik and his men joined the fight, their weapons blazing. The Kalar leader shouted over the noise, "If we don't destroy their command ship, we're all dead." Ethan hesitated, then turned to Saria. "We have to do it." Saria frowned. "It's suicide." "Maybe," Ethan said, his voice firm, "but it's the only way to give everyone else a chance." For the first time, Saria looked at him with something like respect. "Then let's make it count." The turning point. Using a commandeered Kalar fighter, Ethan and Saria launched an assault on the Dominion command ship. The battle was fierce, the enemy's firepower overwhelming. But Ethan's quick thinking and Saria's combat expertise turned the tide. Together, they disabled the ship's engines and destroyed its main weapon array, forcing the Dominion to retreat. As the fighter returned to the outpost, Vorik greeted them with a begrudging nod. "Not bad, human. Not bad at all." Ethan grinned, his exhaustion evident. "I'll take that as a compliment." The artifact's revelation. Back aboard the Vanguard, the artifact revealed its final secret. Its swirling patterns coalesced into a map that led to a hidden Dominion stronghold. At its center was a massive energy signature, larger than anything the Federation had ever encountered. Saria's expression darkened as she studied the map. That's their endgame. If we don't stop them there, nothing will. Ethan met her gaze, his resolve unshakable. Then we stop them. Chapter 4. The Only Chance. The Vanguard moved through the vastness of space, cloaked and silent, its crew bracing for what they all knew would be a suicide mission. The artifact's map revealed the Dominion's stronghold, a massive, heavily fortified station orbiting a dying star. The station pulsed with a deadly energy signature, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. In the war room, Ethan, Saria, and Vorik stood around a holographic display, watching as the station's defenses came into focus. The Dominion hadn't spared a single resource in protecting their weapon. Layered shields, swarms of automated drones, and an entire fleet surrounded the installation. "This is madness," Vorik growled, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Even with my syndicate's help, you're asking us to storm a fortress guarded by half the Dominion fleet." Ethan leaned over the table, his jaw set. "If we don't, they'll use whatever's in there to destroy every planet in their path, including your outposts." Vorik hissed, his sharp teeth flashing. "I know what's at stake, human, but knowing and doing are two very different things." Saria stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "The Dominion isn't invincible. We've faced them before and won." "Barely," Vorik shot back. Ethan raised a hand, stopping their argument. "Listen, we have the element of surprise. The Vanguard's cloaking tech gets us in close. Vorik, your syndicate distracts their fleet while Saria and I infiltrate the station and disable the weapon." Vorik tilted his head, studying Ethan. "And what happens if you fail?" We won't, Ethan said, his voice firm. Because we can't. Into the lion's den. As the vanguard approached the Dominion stronghold, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. If they failed, it wouldn't just mean the end of Earth, it would mean the end of everything. Saria stood beside him, her plasma blades secured at her hips. You ready for this? She asked, her tone almost casual. No, Ethan admitted. But that's never stopped me before. Saria smirked. Good answer. The vanguard cloaked itself as it slipped past the Dominion's outer defenses. Vorik Syndicate ships launched their assault, drawing the Dominion fleet away from the station. Explosions lit up the void as the Syndicate's ragtag fleet went head-to-head with the Dominion's precision-engineered warships. Ethan and Saria moved through the vanguard's dimly lit corridors, heading toward the boarding pod that would take them to the station. Max padded along beside them, his energy shield flickering faintly in the low light. You sure about bringing him? Saria asked, nodding at the dog. Ethan glanced down at Max, who wagged his tail. He's gotten us this far. I'm not leaving him behind now. Saria didn't argue. She simply stepped into the pod, her expression hardening. Let's finish this. The infiltration. The boarding pod latched onto the station's outer hull with a faint hiss, its airlock sealing as Ethan and Saria donned their helmets. The sound of their breathing filled the silence as the pod's cutting tools worked to breach the station's outer shell. When the hatch finally opened, they were met with a corridor bathed in red light. The station's interior was cold and metallic, every surface humming faintly with the energy of the massive weapon housed within. Stay close, Saria whispered. They moved quickly and silently, disabling security systems and avoiding patrols as they made their way toward the weapon's core. The artifact's map guided them, its glowing runes shifting in real time to reveal their path. But as they neared the core, they encountered resistance. Dominion soldiers, alerted by the station's sensors, poured into the corridors, their weapons blazing. Ethan and Saria fought back with brutal efficiency. Saria's plasma blades hummed as they cut through armor, her movements fluid and precise. Ethan's rifle barked with each shot, his aim true as he provided cover fire. Max lunged at the soldiers with feral determination, his energy shield deflecting their attacks. The weapon's core. When they finally reached the core, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The weapon wasn't just a machine, it was alive. A massive, pulsating mass of crystalline energy filled the chamber, its surface shifting and swirling with an almost sentient awareness. What is that? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with awe and fear. Saria's expression was grim. A Nixium core. It's a living energy source. If the Dominion activates it, it'll consume everything within light years. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the core. How do we shut it down? There's only one way, Saria said quietly. A controlled overload. But the process is unstable. What do you mean, unstable? Ethan asked, his voice sharp. Saria met his gaze, her expression pained. The person who initiates the overload won't survive. A sacrifice. Ethan's stomach twisted as the weight of her words sank in. No, there's got to be another way. There isn't, Saria said firmly. This is the only chance we have to stop the Dominion. Ethan clenched his fists. Then I'll do it. Saria's eyes widened. Don't be ridiculous. You wouldn't last 5 seconds in that chamber. And you would? Ethan shot back. They stared at each other, the weight of the moment hanging between them. Finally, Saria stepped forward, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. This is my fight, Ethan. It always has been. You've done more than enough. Ethan shook his head, his voice trembling. I'm not letting you throw your life away. Saria's gaze softened. This isn't goodbye. It's just the end of one chapter. Max barked, his tail wagging hesitantly as if sensing the tension. Saria knelt, scratching behind his ears. Take care of him, okay? Ethan's throat tightened, but he nodded. You have my word. The final stand. Saria stepped into the core chamber, the energy swirling around her as she began the overload sequence. The station shook violently, alarms blaring as the Nixium core's energy spiraled out of control. Outside the chamber, Ethan and Max fought off waves of Dominion soldiers, holding the line as Saria worked. The corridors were a chaos of blaster fire and explosions, but Ethan didn't falter. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Finally, Saria's voice crackled over the comms. "It's done. Get out of here." Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding. "Not without you." "There's no time," Saria shouted. "Go." Escape and hope. Ethan and Max raced back to the boarding pod as the station began to collapse. The Nixium core's energy erupted in a blinding wave, consuming everything in its path. The Vanguard's engines roared as it sped away, the shockwave narrowly missing them. In the silence that followed, Ethan stood on the observation deck, his chest tight as he stared at the debris field where the station had been. Max sat beside him, his head resting on Ethan's knee. "She did it," Ethan whispered. "She saved us." A new beginning. Weeks later, Ethan sat alone in a quiet corner of Earth's central spaceport, his mind heavy with memories of Saria. The Dominion had retreated, their plans shattered, but the cost had been immeasurable. As he stared out at the stars, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Miss me, human?" Ethan turned, his heart leaping as he saw Saria standing there, battered but alive. Her violet eyes sparkled with a faint glow, and a small smile played on her lips. "Saria," Ethan breathed, standing and pulling her into a tight embrace. "How dash?" "I'm harder to kill than you think," she said, her tone teasing. "And I had a good reason to come back." Max barked excitedly, wagging his tail as he ran circles around them. Ethan laughed, his relief washing over him like a tidal wave. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope. They had survived the impossible, and together, they would face whatever came next.